The massive alien fleet moved through space like a dark cloud. 10,000 warships stretched across the void, each one bigger than a city block. Their hulls gleamed with silver metal that seemed to drink in the starlight. These were the ships of the Zephyrian Armada, the most feared military force in the galaxy. Admiral Kethvar stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion. The bridge was enormous, with crystal walls that showed the stars outside. Dozens of alien crew. Members worked at glowing control panels. Their blue skin and tall, thin bodies moved with quick precision. They had conquered 847 worlds in the last 300 years. Not once had they faced real resistance. "Sir, we are entering the target system," announced Lieutenant Zexhai from her station. Her voice carried the same confidence that filled every Zephyrian warrior. "Initial scans show a single inhabited planet. The locals call it Earth." Kethvar walked to the main viewing screen. The yellow star ahead looked ordinary. Nothing special about this system at all. "What do we know about these humans?" "Primitive. Species, sir. They have barely learned to travel between stars. Our scouts report simple metal ships and basic energy weapons. Population of about 8 billion. They should surrender within hours of our arrival." The Admiral nodded. It was always the same. Primitive species saw their mighty fleet and gave up immediately. The smart ones surrendered and became slaves. The foolish ones fought and died quickly. Either way, the galactic hegemony grew stronger. "Any defensive fleets detected?" "Yes, sir, but laughably small, about 300 ships total. They appear to be made from welded metal scraps. Our sensors can barely detect their power sources. It seems they still use chemical rockets for basic movement." Laughter rippled through the bridge crew. Chemical rockets! The Zephyrians had abandoned such crude technology thousands of years ago. Their ships used antimatter cores that could power entire planets. These humans were like children playing with sticks while adults carried energy weapons. "Sir, we are receiving a transmission from the planet," announced the communications officer. "Already? They must be eager to surrender. Put it on the main screen." The image that appeared showed a human male in a simple blue uniform. He had brown hair and serious dark eyes. Behind him was a room filled with screens and busy humans. The quality of the transmission was poor, using ancient radio waves instead of quantum communication. "Unknown fleet, this is Admiral Sarah Chan of Terra Defense Command. You are approaching a protected system. Turn back now. This is your only warning." The bridge fell silent for a moment. Then Kethvar began to laugh. His laughter grew louder and deeper until it echoed through the massive bridge. Soon his entire crew was laughing with him. The sound was cruel and mocking. "Did this primitive just threaten us?" Kethvar asked between laughs. "A species that still uses radio waves is giving warnings to the Zephyrian Armada?" He stepped forward toward the screen. "Human, I am Admiral Kethvar of the Galactic Hegemony. You will surrender immediately, or we will destroy your pathetic world. You have 1 hour to respond with complete submission." The human woman's face showed no fear. Her voice remained calm and steady. "Warning acknowledged and rejected. Consequences accepted. Terra Defense Command out." The transmission ended. The bridge crew looked at each other in surprise. Most species begged for mercy by now. Some tried to negotiate. A few brave ones made speeches about freedom and honor, but none had ever dismissed the Zephyrian Armada with such casual indifference. "Sir, should we begin the standard bombardment protocol?" asked the weapons officer. Kethvar considered this. Usually they would destroy a few cities from orbit to show their power, but something about the human's attitude bothered him. She had acted like she held the stronger position. That was impossible, but it was strange. "No. Send the vanguard first. Let them see our ships up close before we crush their spirit completely. Sometimes the primitive ones need a demonstration." Orders went out across the fleet. 500 ships broke away from the main formation. These were smaller vessels, but each one carried enough firepower to level a continent. They moved toward Earth's orbital space where the human fleet waited. As the Vanguard approached, more detailed scans of the human ships came in. The reports made the Zephyrians laugh even harder. The human vessels looked like they had been built in scrap yards. Mismatched hull sections were welded together with visible seams. Some ships appeared to be converted cargo haulers or mining vessels. Their weapons were simple projectile launchers and primitive missile systems. "Sir, I am reading some unusual energy signatures from the human vessels," reported the science officer. "Their power sources are strange, not antimatter, not fusion, something different." "Different how?" "I cannot identify the technology, sir, but the energy output is much higher than expected from such crude-looking ships." Kethavar waved his hand dismissively. "Probably some dangerous and unstable experiment. Primitives often play with forces they do not understand. It will make no difference against our shields and armor." The Vanguard reached the edge of Earth's system. The human fleet moved to intercept them. 300 ships against 500. The humans were outnumbered, outgunned, and completely out of their league. This would be over quickly. "Sir, the human admiral is requesting a final communication," announced the communications officer. "Put her through. Let us hear her last words before we destroy her fleet." The same human woman appeared on screen again. This time she was clearly on the bridge of a warship. The bridge looked functional but basic. No crystal walls or floating displays, just metal bulkheads and simple computer screens. "Admiral Kethavar, this is your final chance to withdraw from this system. We do not want to fight you, but we will if you force us to." "You do not want to fight?" Kethavar's voice was full of mock surprise. "Human, you are facing the greatest military force in galactic history. We have conquered nearly 1,000 worlds. Your entire species could not challenge a single one of our battleships." "We know who you are," Admiral Chen replied quietly. "We have been watching the galaxy for a long time. We know what you do to the species you conquer. We know about the slave worlds and the destroyed civilizations. That is why we prepared." "Prepared? With those rust buckets you call warships?" For the first time, the human woman smiled. It was not a pleasant smile. "Admiral, you are about to learn something important about humans. We are very good at making things look simpler than they really are. You were warned. What happens next is your choice." The transmission ended again. Kethavar stared at the blank screen for a moment. There was something in the human's voice that he had never heard before from a species facing invasion. Confidence. Real, unshakable confidence. "Sir, should we proceed with the attack?" asked his weapons officer. Kethavar looked at the tactical display. 500 of his finest ships against 300 primitive human vessels. The outcome was certain. But that woman's smile bothered him. No species had ever looked at the Zephyrian armada and smiled. "Begin the attack. Destroy half their fleet quickly to break their spirit. We will accept their surrender afterward." As the Vanguard moved toward battle positions, Kethavar felt something he had not experienced in centuries of conquest. It was small and easily ignored, but it was there. For the first time since becoming an admiral, Kethavar felt the tiny, cold touch of doubt. The battle began exactly as Admiral Kethavar expected. His 500 Vanguard ships moved into perfect attack formation. Their energy shields glowed bright blue as they powered up. Weapon systems came online with the familiar hum of charging, antimatter cannons. This was the sound that had brought terror to nearly 1,000 worlds. The human fleet moved to meet them. Their ships looked even worse up close. Welded hull plates, exposed pipes, and what appeared to be hastily attached weapon systems. Some of the human vessels had obvious patches where holes had been repaired. They looked like a fleet of space junk that someone had tried to turn into warships. "Sir, the human ships are moving into attack position," reported the tactical officer. "They appear to be using some form of chemical propulsion, very crude." Begin firing. Target their largest ships first. Let them see the power of Zephyrian technology. The Vanguard opened fire. Brilliant beams of antimatter energy lanced across space toward the human fleet. Each beam carried enough power to destroy a city. The energy weapons were the finest technology in the galaxy, capable of cutting through any known armor or shielding. The beams struck the human ships. For a moment, Kethvar expected to see the familiar explosions as primitive vessels were torn apart. Instead, something impossible happened. The energy beams seemed to bend around the human ships, flowing past them, like water around rocks. "What just happened?" Kethvar demanded. "Sir, the human ships appear to have some form of defensive technology. Our energy weapons are not penetrating their hulls." "That is impossible. Nothing can deflect antimatter beams." Before anyone could respond, the human ships fired back. But their weapons were nothing like the elegant energy beams of civilized warfare. Instead, they launched physical objects, chunks of metal that moved impossibly fast through space. The first projectile hit a Zephyrian cruiser at tremendous speed. The kinetic impact was devastating. The metal slug punched completely through the ship's energy shields as if they were not there. It tore through the hull, destroying internal systems and causing a massive explosion that split the cruiser in half. "Report!" Kethvar shouted over the alarm sounds filling his bridge. "Sir, the humans are using kinetic weapons, solid projectiles moving at extremely high velocity. Our shields are designed to stop energy attacks, not physical impacts at these speeds." More human projectiles streaked through space. Each one moved so fast it was barely visible until it struck. Zephyrian ships began exploding throughout the Vanguard. Their beautiful energy shields, the pride of galactic technology, were useless against simple chunks of metal moving fast enough. "How are they accelerating those projectiles to such velocity?" demanded the science officer. "Unknown. Sir, the energy requirements should be enormous, but their ships do not appear to have power sources capable of this." A new alarm sounded. "Sir, detecting multiple missile launches from the human fleet." Finally, something we can handle. "Activate point defense systems." The Zephyrian ships began shooting down the incoming missiles with precise laser fire. This was familiar territory, but as the missiles got closer, something strange happened. Instead of trying to avoid the defensive fire, some missiles deliberately flew into it. When hit, they exploded in brilliant flashes of light and electromagnetic pulses. "Sir, those were not standard missiles. They were some form of nuclear device designed to disrupt our sensors and communications." While the Zephyrian sensors were recovering from the nuclear flashes, more human projectiles struck home. 3 more cruisers were destroyed in as many seconds. The humans were using the nuclear explosions as cover for their kinetic attacks. "This is impossible," Kethvar muttered. "Primitive species do not fight like this." The battle continued, but it was not going as planned. The human ships moved in unpredictable patterns, using tactics no civilized species would consider. Some ships deliberately rammed into larger Zephyrian vessels after their crews escaped in small pods. Others used their own nuclear weapons as mines, detonating them when enemy ships came too close. Most disturbing of all, the humans seemed to learn and adapt during the fight. Each attack wave used slightly different tactics. When the Zephyrians adjusted their defenses, the humans changed their approach again. "Sir, we have lost over 100 ships," reported the tactical officer. His voice carried disbelief. "The humans have lost approximately 30 vessels." Kethvar stared at the tactical display in shock. His vanguard was being systematically destroyed by a primitive species using crude weapons. It made no sense, according to everything the galactic hegemony knew about warfare. "Sir, incoming transmission from the human admiral." "Put it through." Admiral Chen appeared on screen again. Her uniform was slightly torn and there was a small cut on her forehead, but her expression remained calm. Behind her, the human bridge, crew worked frantically at their stations. "Admiral Kethvar, you were warned. This is your last chance to withdraw your forces from this system. We do not want to destroy all of your ships, but we will if necessary." "How?" Kethvar asked. The word came out before he could stop it. "How are you doing this? Your technology is centuries behind ours." Admiral Chen's smile returned. "You made an assumption, Admiral. You assumed that newer technology is always better technology. You also assumed that we would fight the way you fight. Those were both mistakes. Your weapons are primitive kinetic projectiles." "Yes, they are. But kinetic energy is kinetic energy, regardless of how you deliver it. A piece of metal moving fast enough can destroy anything. The hard part is making it move fast enough. We solved that problem 50 years ago. Your shields should not be able to stop our antimatter beams." "They cannot. We do not use shields. We use something else. Something your sensors cannot properly detect because you have never seen it before." The transmission continued as explosions lit up space around them. "You see, Admiral, humans have a talent for finding new solutions to old problems. We studied your technology through captured ships and intercepted communications. We learned how you fight, what weapons you use, what defenses you rely on. Then we designed everything specifically to counter your advantages." Kethvar felt a chill run through his body. "You knew we were coming. We have been monitoring galactic communications for decades. We knew about the hegemony. We knew about the conquered worlds. We knew that eventually you would come for Earth, so we prepared. This is one system, one primitive world. Even if you destroy my vanguard, I have thousands more ships." "Yes, you do. And if you bring them into this system, we will destroy them too. You were warned, Admiral. We kept our promise. Now you face the consequences." The transmission ended. Around the battlefield, the surviving Zephyrian ships were in full retreat. Less than 300 of the original 500 remained functional. The humans had lost fewer than 60 ships. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked the tactical officer. Kethvar looked at the tactical display showing his scattered, fleeing vanguard. In 3 centuries of conquest, he had never seen anything like this. The humans had not just won a battle. They had completely outfought his forces using weapons and tactics that should not have been possible. "Signal the fleet," he said slowly. "Prepare for full assault. Bring all 10,000 ships to battle readiness." "Sir, perhaps we should reconsider. The humans clearly have capabilities we did not expect." "No!" Kethvar's voice filled the bridge. "I will not be defeated by primitives. They may have surprised us with their crude tricks, but they cannot stand against the full might of the Zephyrian Armada. We will crush them with overwhelming force." But even as he gave the orders, Admiral Kethvar could not shake the memory of Admiral Chen's confident smile. The humans had been prepared for this encounter. They had studied his forces and developed specific countermeasures. If they had planned this carefully for the vanguard, what else had they prepared? For the first time in his long military career, Kethvar wondered if he had made a terrible mistake by ignoring the human warning. Admiral Kethvar would not accept defeat from a primitive species. The loss of his vanguard was embarrassing, but it only proved that the humans had some clever tricks. Numbers would solve this problem. The galactic hegemony had always won through. Overwhelming force, and this time would be no different. "Deploy the full assault fleet," he ordered. 5,000 ships in the first wave. Keep 4,000 in reserve. These humans may have surprised us once, but they cannot stand against half our total fleet. The massive Zephyrian formation moved toward Earth. 5,000 warships arranged in perfect battle order. Each ship was a masterpiece of galactic engineering, carrying weapons that could level continents and shields that had never been broken. The sight should have terrified any species in the galaxy. On Earth, Admiral Chen watched the approaching fleet from her command center deep underground. Around her, hundreds of humans worked at computer stations. The walls were covered with displays showing ship positions, weapon status, and communication channels. But unlike the crystal technology of the Zephyrians, everything here looked functional. and practical. "Admiral, the main alien fleet is entering the outer system," reported Colonel Martinez from his station. "Estimated 5,000 ships. They are maintaining formation and approaching slowly." "Good. They are being careful this time. Signal all stations. Execute Defense Plan Omega." Throughout the solar system, hidden bases began to activate. These installations had been built in secret over 50 years of preparation. They were not visible to normal sensors because they were designed to look like natural features or space debris. On Europa, one of Jupiter's moons, what appeared to be an ice mining facility suddenly revealed its true purpose. Massive hangar doors opened in the moon's surface. Thousands of small, fast ships poured out like angry insects. These were not the large vessels the Zephyrians had fought before. They were tiny, automated drones designed for only one purpose. "Sir, detecting massive launch activity from the outer planets," reported the Zephyrian sensor officer. "Thousands of small vessels approaching our position." "Fighter craft," Kethvar said dismissively. "Primitive species always rely on swarm tactics when outmatched. Order the point defense systems to destroy them." But as the human drones got closer, the Zephyrian crews realized something disturbing. The small ships were not trying to avoid defensive fire. When hit by energy weapons, they did not explode cleanly. Instead, they broke apart into smaller pieces that continued moving toward the alien fleet. "Sir, the drone fragments are still active. They appear to be some form of self-replicating technology." "Self-replicating?" Kethvar felt a chill. Galactic law strictly prohibited such weapons because they were too dangerous to control. The drone fragments reached the Zephyrian ships and began attaching themselves to the hulls. Within minutes, they started to multiply, using the ship's own metal to create more copies of themselves. The elegant alien vessels became covered with growing masses of human technology that ate through their armor like a metal disease. "All ships, emergency purge protocols," Kethvar ordered. "Vent atmosphere and use emergency lasers to burn off the infection." Some ships managed to clear the replicating drones, but others were not fast enough. The growing masses of human technology reached critical systems and began shutting down life support, weapons, and engines. Dozens of Zephyrian ships went dark as their own hulls were consumed from the outside. While the fleet dealt with the drone swarm, Saturn's rings began to move. What the aliens had assumed were natural ice and rock formations suddenly revealed themselves as camouflaged weapon platforms. Massive railguns, each one the size of a city, began firing projectiles toward the Zephyrian fleet. "Sir, detecting multiple large-scale kinetic launches from Saturn orbit." The projectiles were not small pieces of metal like before. These were asteroid-sized chunks of rock and metal accelerated to tremendous speeds. Each one carried the kinetic energy of a planet-killer weapon. "Evasive maneuvers, all ships scatter formation." The Zephyrian fleet broke apart as ships tried to avoid the incoming projectiles. But the asteroids were not aimed at individual ships. They were aimed at the spaces where the alien fleet would be forced to move. The humans had predicted the evasive patterns and fired accordingly. Multiple massive impacts tore through the Zephyrian formation. Each asteroid strike destroyed several ships and sent debris spinning into others. The perfect military formation became a chaotic mess of damaged vessels and emergency maneuvers. "Sir, we are detecting weapon signatures from the asteroid belt itself." Admiral Chen's voice came over every communication channel in the solar system. "Admiral Kethvar, this is your final warning. You are now fighting the entire Sol system, not just Earth's fleet. We have spent 50 years turning our home into the most heavily defended system in this part of the galaxy. You can still withdraw your forces." "Never!" Kethvar shouted back. "We are the galactic hegemony. We do not retreat from primitives." "Then you have chosen your fate. What happened next would have been impossible for any civilized species to imagine." The humans did not just defend their world. They attacked with weapons that violated every principle of honorable warfare. From hidden bases throughout the system came clouds of microscopic machines. These were too small for sensors to detect individually. but they spread through space like an invisible plague. When they reached Zephyrian ships, they began attacking the crews directly. Alien soldiers found their equipment failing, their air systems producing strange chemicals, and their computer networks turning against them. Even worse, the humans launched biological weapons based on Earth's most dangerous diseases. These had been carefully modified to affect alien biology. Zephyrian. Crews began falling sick with illnesses their medical technology could not identify or treat. Sir, multiple ships reporting system failures and crew casualties? The humans are using prohibited weapons. Of course they are. Kethvar realized the terrible truth. They are not a civilized species. They do not follow galactic law. But the worst was yet to come. From deep space came signals that chilled every Zephyrian commander. The humans had somehow gained control of several ships from the original Vanguard. These captured vessels were now broadcasting Zephyrian command codes and technical specifications to the entire human defense network. "They have our security codes," whispered the communications officer. "They know our ship designs, our weapon systems, our tactical procedures." Admiral Chen's voice filled the communication channels again. "We told you we had been watching, Admiral. We have been intercepting your communications for decades. We know about your other fleets, your supply lines, your base locations. We know about the slave worlds and the species you have conquered. This battle was never just about defending Earth." On the main tactical display, new contacts began appearing throughout the galaxy. Human ships previously hidden were attacking hegemony supply depots and communication stations. This was not a single battle for one world. It was a coordinated attack on the entire galactic hegemony. "This is impossible," Kethvar said in a broken voice. "You are one primitive species. How can you challenge the entire galaxy?" "We are not alone, Admiral. For 50 years, refugee ships have been reaching Earth. Survivors from worlds you conquered, escaped slaves from your mining colonies, free species who refused to bow to your empire. They have been teaching us about galactic technology while we taught them about human warfare. Together we have been preparing for this day." The Zephyrian assault fleet was in complete chaos. Half the ships were destroyed or disabled. The survivors were scattered and under constant attack from weapons they could not counter. For the first time in 3 centuries, a Zephyrian invasion had not just failed. It had been completely crushed. "Sir, what are your orders?" asked the tactical officer. Kethvar stared at the displays showing his ruined fleet. The humans had not just defeated his forces. They had revealed that everything the galactic hegemony believed about warfare was wrong. Primitive species were not supposed to be able to do this. "Signal full retreat," he said quietly. All ships returned to reserve formation. But as his surviving ships tried to withdraw, Admiral Kethvar realized that Admiral Chen had not been making empty threats. The humans really had turned their entire star system into a weapon. And if they could do this to his fleet, what could they do to the rest of the galaxy? Admiral Kethvar ordered a full retreat, but the humans had other plans. As the surviving Zephyrian ships tried to withdraw from the inner solar system, they discovered that escape would not be simple. The humans had prepared for this possibility. 2. "Sir, navigation systems are not responding properly," reported the helm officer. "We are receiving conflicting signals from our own computers." "What do you mean, conflicting signals?" "The navigation computer is trying to plot a course toward Earth instead of away from it. When I override manually, the systems reset themselves after a few minutes." Admiral Chen's voice filled the communication channels once again. "Admiral Kethvar, your ships are no longer under your complete control. Our cyber warfare specialists have been inside your computer networks since the battle began. Your vessels will remain in this system until we decide otherwise." Kethvar felt his heart sink. The humans had not just defeated his fleet in battle. They had captured it without his knowledge. "This is an act of piracy. By galactic law, you must allow retreating forces to withdraw." "Galactic law?" Admiral Chen's laugh was cold and harsh. The same galactic law that allows your species to enslave entire civilizations? The same law that permits orbital bombardment of civilian populations? We have seen how the galactic hegemony interprets law, Admiral. Now you will see how humans interpret justice. The trapped Zephyrian ships found themselves herded into a single area of space near Mars. Human vessels surrounded them, weapons trained on any ship that tried to break formation. But the humans were not simply holding them prisoner. They were broadcasting something that chilled every alien crew member. People of the galaxy! Admiral Chen's voice carried across subspace communication channels that reached every inhabited world. Today marks the end of the galactic hegemony's reign of terror. The Zephyrian Armada, conqueror of nearly 1,000 worlds, has been defeated by the forces of Earth and her allies. The broadcast showed images from the battle. Zephyrian ships being torn apart by human weapons. The mighty fleet reduced to scattered debris and helpless prisoners. For species across the galaxy who had lived in fear of the hegemony for centuries, the images were impossible to believe. The hegemony told you that resistance was futile. They said their technology and numbers made them invincible. Today, we proved them wrong. Any species that continues to support their expansion will face the same consequences as this fleet. Admiral Kethvar listened in growing horror as the human woman continued. The age of conquest is over. Humanity claims its place among the stars, and we will not be conquered. More importantly, we will not allow others to be conquered either. This is our declaration. Earth and her allies will liberate every slave world, free every imprisoned species, and hunt down every hegemony fleet until their empire of cruelty ends. The broadcast ended, but its effects rippled across the galaxy. Immediately, on dozens of worlds, slave populations began uprising against their hegemony overseers. Species that had been forced to pay tribute declared independence. Most shocking of all, several hegemony member worlds announced they were switching sides to join the human alliance. "Sir, we are receiving emergency communications from Hegemony Command," reported the communications officer. "They are demanding a full report on our mission status." "What should I tell them?" Kethvar stared at the tactical display. Of his original 10,000 ships, fewer than 3,000 remained functional. The rest were destroyed or so badly damaged they would never fight again. His mighty armada, the terror of the galaxy, had been broken by a species that still used metal ships and kinetic weapons. "Tell them the truth," he said finally. "Tell them that everything we believed about human capabilities was wrong. Tell them that the primitives have weapons and tactics we cannot counter. Tell them that the age of easy conquest is over." But even as he dictated his report, Kethvar knew it was too late. The humans had not just won a battle. They had started a revolution that would spread across the entire galaxy. Over the following days, the full extent of human preparation became clear. The refugees who had been reaching Earth for decades were not just escaping slavery. They were carrying intelligence about hegemony operations, ship designs, and weaknesses. The humans had been building a detailed picture of galactic civilization while appearing to be isolated and primitive. Even more disturbing, the humans revealed they had been capturing hegemony ships for years. Small vessels that had gone missing were assumed to be lost to space accidents or pirate attacks. In reality, they had been taken by human raiders operating far from Earth. Each captured ship provided more technology and intelligence. "We studied you for 50 years, Admiral Chen explained during one of her daily broadcasts to the galaxy. "We learned your languages, your technology, your tactics. We understood your strengths and your weaknesses. Most importantly, we learned about your victims. Every species you conquered became our potential ally. The humans had done something the galactic hegemony thought impossible. They had built a secret alliance of oppressed species throughout the galaxy. While the hegemony saw only conquered slaves, the humans saw potential partners with valuable knowledge and burning motivation for revenge. Sir, long-range sensors are detecting human fleet movements throughout hegemony space, reported the intelligence officer. They are attacking supply convoys, communication stations, and isolated outposts. The attacks are coordinated and appear to be using captured hegemony vessels. Admiral Kethvar realized the terrible scope of human planning. This was not a desperate defense by a primitive world. This was a carefully orchestrated campaign to destroy the galactic hegemony from within. The humans had used their apparent weakness to lure the entire Zephyrian armada into a trap, removing the hegemony's strongest fleet from galactic defense. How many other species are working with them? He asked. Intelligence suggests at least 40 different worlds have declared for the human alliance. Many more are considering rebellion. The humans are offering them something we never did. What? Freedom. Real freedom. They are not demanding tribute or slaves. They are not installing governors or occupation forces. They are simply offering to help liberate oppressed worlds and then leave them alone. This was a concept the galactic hegemony could not understand. Every civilization they knew sought to expand and control others. The idea of liberating worlds without conquering them made no sense to their way of thinking. Admiral Chen appeared on screen one final time before the surviving Zephyrian ships were allowed to depart. Her message was simple and direct. Admiral Kethvar, you and your remaining ships are free to leave this system. Return to your masters and tell them what you have seen. Tell them that the galaxy has changed. Tell them that humanity and our allies will no longer tolerate their crimes against sentient life. She leaned forward, her eyes hard with determination. You gave us no choice but to fight. We gave you warnings that you ignored. Now face the consequences of that decision. The galactic hegemony's days are numbered. We will hunt down every slaver, free every prisoner, and ensure that no species ever again suffers under your empire of cruelty. As the broken remains of his fleet finally escaped the Sol system, Admiral Kethvar understood that this was not just a military defeat. The humans had shattered the myth of hegemony invincibility. More than that, they had provided a rallying point for every oppressed species in the galaxy. The Zephyrian armada had come to conquer one primitive world. Instead, they had awakened a force that would reshape galactic civilization forever. The age of the galactic hegemony was ending, and the age of human-led liberation had begun. 6 months after the Battle of Sol, the galaxy was a very different place. Admiral Kethvar sat in a small cell on Luna, Earth's moon, staring out through a reinforced window at the bustling activity outside. Human ships moved constantly through space, but they were not alone. Vessels from dozens of different species worked alongside them in the greatest alliance the galaxy had ever seen. The galactic hegemony still existed, but it was shrinking rapidly. Every week brought news of more worlds declaring independence. Some joined the human alliance immediately. Others chose to remain neutral, but none wanted to stay under hegemony control after seeing what had happened to the mighty Zephyrian armada. Admiral Kethvar, a voice said behind him. He turned to see Admiral Chen entering his cell. She looked tired, but satisfied. The past 6 months had been busy ones for the human leader. Admiral Chen, have you come to gloat over your victory? No, she replied, sitting down across from him. I have come to offer you a choice. Kethvar was surprised. In 6 months of captivity, this was the first time she had visited him personally. What kind of choice? Your government has refused all attempts at negotiation. They insist that the hegemony will never surrender to primitive species. They are preparing to send more fleets against us. Of course they are. The hegemony does not negotiate with rebels. Admiral Chen smiled sadly. That is exactly the problem. Your leaders still think this is a rebellion that can be crushed with enough force. They do not understand that everything has changed. She activated a small display device that showed a map of the galaxy. Red areas marked hegemony territory, blue areas showed the human alliance, and green areas indicated neutral, or independent worlds. The map told a clear story. Red was shrinking while blue and green expanded. In 6 months, we have liberated over 200 worlds, Admiral Chen explained. Not conquered, liberated. We remove hegemony forces, help establish local governments, and then we leave. The people are free to choose their own path. Impossible. No species gives up conquered territory. Humans do. We never wanted an empire, Admiral. We wanted freedom, not just for ourselves, but for everyone. Kethvar studied the map more carefully. The pattern was unlike anything he had seen in galactic history. The humans were not expanding their territory. They were creating a network of free worlds that chose to work together. "What is your offer?" he asked finally. "Help us end this war peacefully. You understand hegemony tactics and strategy better than almost anyone. Work with us to find a way to stop the fighting before more lives are lost." "You want me to betray my own species?" "I want you to save your species. The hegemony cannot win this war. Every battle costs them ships and worlds they cannot replace. Meanwhile, our alliance grows stronger with each victory. If this continues, the Zephyrian people will be completely destroyed." Admiral Chen stood and walked to the window. Outside, a massive construction project was taking shape. New shipyards built with technology from dozens of different species. Human engineering combined with alien science to create vessels more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen. "The species in our alliance are not prisoners or slaves," she continued. "They are partners. Each one contributes what they do best. The Crystalline Collective provides advanced computer technology. The nomadic fleets share their knowledge of space navigation. The Forge worlds offer manufacturing expertise. Together, we are building something greater than any single empire. And what do humans contribute? We contribute what we have always been good at, finding new solutions to old problems, taking existing technology and using it in ways no one expected. Most importantly, we contribute the idea that different species can work together as equals instead of masters and slaves." Kethvar was quiet for a long time. Through the window he could see Zephyrian prisoners working alongside human engineers. They were not chained or guarded. They appeared to be contributing to the construction projects voluntarily. "What are they building out there?" "Ships," Admiral Chen replied. "Not warships, though we are building those too. Mostly we are building exploration vessels, colony ships, and rescue craft. The galaxy is full of refugees from hegemony oppression. We are helping them find new homes or return to their original worlds. And the Zephyrian prisoners? They are not prisoners anymore. Anyone who wants to leave is free to go. Those who stay do so because they choose to help build something better." This concept was difficult for Kethvar to understand. In hegemony, society captured enemies were always enslaved or executed. The idea of giving them freedom to choose their own fate was completely foreign. "Why are you really showing me this?" he asked. "Because in 2 days, the hegemony will launch another attack. Intelligence suggests they are sending their entire remaining fleet, nearly 15,000 ships in a final attempt to crush the rebellion." Kethvar felt a chill. He knew the hegemony leadership well enough to believe this was possible. They would rather see the galaxy burn than admit defeat to primitive species. "They plan to destroy everything," Admiral Chen continued. "Every human, world, every allied species, every neutral planet that refused to rejoin the hegemony. They call it the final solution. You cannot stop 15,000 ships. Perhaps not, but we will try. And when we do, millions of Zephyrians will die alongside billions of other beings. Your people will be remembered as genocidal monsters who chose mutual destruction over peaceful coexistence." Admiral Chen turned back to face him. "But it does not have to end that way. Help us find a better path. Help us prove that Zephyrians can be partners instead of conquerors. Kethavar stared at the galactic map again. The human alliance controlled nearly a third of known space. More worlds declared independence every day. Even if the final solution succeeded in destroying the human homeworld, it would not restore the old order. Too many species had tasted freedom to ever accept slavery again. What would you want me to do? Contact the hegemony fleet. Tell them what you have seen here. Explain that the humans are not monsters seeking revenge. We are offering a chance for all species to live in peace. They will not listen. Hegemony doctrine does not allow for negotiation with inferiors. Then help us minimize the bloodshed when they attack. Every life saved matters, whether human, Zephyrian, or any other species. Admiral Kethavar made his decision. For the first time in his life, he would act against hegemony orders. Not out of cowardice or defeat, but because he finally understood what Admiral Chen had been trying to tell him for months. The old way of thinking was ending whether the hegemony accepted it or not. I will help you, he said quietly, not because I believe you will win, but because I believe my people deserve a chance to survive in whatever galaxy emerges from this war. Admiral Chen nodded. That is all any of us can ask for, a chance to build something better than what came before. 3 days later, the hegemony's final solution fleet arrived at the edge of human space. They came expecting to face desperate primitives making a last stand. Instead, they found Admiral Kethavar waiting for them with a message that would echo across the galaxy. Fellow Zephyrians, I am Admiral Kethavar of the destroyed Armada. I speak to you not as a traitor, but as someone who has seen the future. The humans offered us a warning. We ignored it. Now we face the consequences of that choice. But it is not too late to choose a different path. The galaxy held its breath as the greatest fleet in hegemony history paused at the threshold of human space. The decision made in the next few hours would determine whether the future held peace or the complete destruction of galactic civilization. Admiral Chen had been right about one thing. Everything had changed. The age of conquest was ending. The age of cooperation was about to begin, whether through wisdom or through the ashes of the old order.
Captain Elizabeth Gray stood on the bridge of the USS Defiant, her eyes fixed on the large display screen that showed the border between human space and the Krelax Empire. A red line marked the boundary that no human ship had legally crossed in 50 years. Her orders sat open on her tablet. The words were clear, but the weight they carried was enormous. Cross the border, gather intelligence, and return without starting a war. Captain, all systems are ready, said Lieutenant Commander Peter Jones from the tactical station. His voice was steady, but his fingers tapped nervously on the console. Elizabeth nodded. Thank you, Lieutenant Commander. And the stealth systems? Dr. Wright reports they're operating at peak efficiency, Peter replied. As if summoned by his name, Dr. Alan Wright entered the bridge. He was tall and thin, with eyes that seemed too old for his face. The physicist had designed many of the new technologies that made the Defiant special, including the experimental shield system that might be their only advantage if things went wrong. The stealth field will hold, Alan said. But remember, it's not perfect. If we get too close to their sensor arrays, they'll detect us. Elizabeth nodded. We'll keep our distance where possible. She turned to address the entire bridge crew. I know what I'm asking isn't easy. We're about to violate a treaty that has kept peace for half a century. But our intelligence suggests the Empire is planning something big. The scout ships detected in our territory weren't accidents or mistakes. They were mapping our defenses. Maria Sanchez, the communications officer, looked up from her station. Captain, I've been monitoring Imperial communications. There's been an increase in encrypted traffic over the last week. Something is definitely happening. Elizabeth walked to the center of the bridge. The command chair waited, but she remained standing. The brass back home is divided. Some want to wait, gather more evidence through diplomatic channels. Others believe that by then it will be too late. She finally sat down, her decision made. I'm not willing to risk the lives of millions on the hope that the Empire has suddenly become friendly. She pressed a button on her chair. All hands. This is the captain. Prepare to cross the border. Our mission is observation only. We are not here to start a war, but to prevent one. The ship hummed as power flowed to the engines. The Defiant was smaller than most battlecruisers but packed with the latest technology. Its sleek design disguised weapons that could match ships twice its size. Navigation: set course 035 Mark 27, 1/4 impulse until we cross, then go to full stealth, Elizabeth ordered. Lieutenant Daniel Brown, a young officer with steady hands, entered the commands. Course laid in, Captain. Approaching border in 30 seconds. The bridge fell silent. Many of the crew had family who had died in the First Contact War. The Krelax Empire had attacked without warning 50 years ago, targeting human colonies on the outer rim. The war lasted 3 bloody years before ending in a stalemate and a hastily drawn border. 10 seconds to border, Daniel announced. Elizabeth gripped the arms of her chair. Engage stealth systems. The lights dimmed as power diverted to the experimental technology. On the outside, the Defiant seemed to fade, not becoming completely invisible but blending with the darkness of space, distorting its shape on sensors. Border crossed, Daniel said softly as if the enemy might hear. For several long moments, nothing happened. The red line on the tactical display was now behind them. They were in Imperial space, the first authorized human ship to enter in 5 decades. Scanning for patrol ships, Peter said, his eyes fixed on his console. 2 Imperial cruisers detected at coordinates 117 Mark 4, but they don't appear to have noticed us. Elizabeth allowed herself a small breath of relief. Good. Let's keep it that way. Set course for the Targus system. Intelligence believes that's where the military buildup is centered. As the Defiant moved deeper into enemy territory, Elizabeth studied the star chart. Their destination was 3 days away at current speed. 3 days in enemy space, where a single mistake meant disaster. In the science lab, Dr. Wright worked tirelessly. The stealth system was his creation, born from years of research after losing his wife and daughter in the war. Their colony had been one of the first hit by Imperial forces. Alan had been away, presenting research on Earth. He returned to find nothing but ruins. Dr. Wright, a voice called. It was Olivia Martinez, the ship's security chief. The captain asked me to check on your progress with the shield modifications. Alan barely looked up from his work. They'll be ready when needed. The new configuration should be twice as effective against Imperial weapons. Olivia stepped closer, lowering her voice. Do you really think they're planning another war? After all this time? Alan's hands stopped moving. The Empire doesn't think like we do. Their society values conquest above all else. The peace we've had isn't peace to them. It's just a pause. Back on the bridge, Maria Sanchez suddenly straightened, in her chair. Captain, I'm picking up increased communications traffic ahead. Military channels heavily encrypted. Elizabeth moved to her station. Can you decode any of it? Maria shook her head. Not yet, but the volume suggests fleet movements. Tactical? Any ships in the area? Elizabeth asked. Peter checked his readings. Nothing on sensors yet, but there's a debris field ahead that could mask signatures. Elizabeth considered their options. Going around would add time to their journey, but passing through might expose them. Take us through, half speed. Be ready to jump to full power if we're detected, she decided. As they entered the debris field, the crew grew more tense. Twisted metal and shattered rock floated around them, the remains of an old battle or destroyed station. Something's not right, Peter said suddenly. These readings, some of this debris is recent, very recent. Before Elizabeth could respond, alarms blared across the bridge. Proximity alert, Peter shouted. Imperial warship decloaking directly ahead. The screen showed a massive ship materializing from the darkness. It was at least twice the size of the Defiant, its hull marked with the red symbols of the Imperial fleet. They've seen us, Maria reported, her voice tight. They're charging weapons. Elizabeth didn't hesitate. Red alert. Shields up. Evasive. Maneuvers. The Defiant banked hard as the first Imperial shots flashed past them into space. "Return fire, defensive pattern only," Elizabeth ordered. "Target their weapons, but try not to destroy them." The human ship fired, precise beams striking the Imperial vessel's weapon mounts. "Direct hit," Peter reported. "Their forward batteries are offline." "They're calling for reinforcements," Maria warned. "Multiple ships converging on our position." Elizabeth stood, facing the screen that showed the Imperial warship. This was a trap. They knew we were coming. The ship rocked as another shot struck. "Them." "Shields holding at 80%, Peter said, surprise in his voice. "Dr. Wright's modifications are working." Elizabeth made a quick decision. "We can't turn back now. If they're setting traps, they're definitely planning something. Plot a course around their reinforcements. We continue to Targus." As the Defiant accelerated away from the Imperial ship, evading further fire, Elizabeth knew their mission had just become much more dangerous. The Empire knew they were here, which meant the element of surprise was gone. But there was something else, something that sent a chill down her spine. The trap suggested the Empire had known they were coming, and that meant only one thing. There was a traitor somewhere, either on her ship or back on Earth. The USS Defiant raced deeper into enemy space, a lone human ship now hunted by the full might of the Krelax Empire. 3 days passed as the USS Defiant moved deeper into Krelax Empire space. The ship stayed in stealth mode, hiding behind moons and in asteroid fields when Imperial patrols came too close. Captain Elizabeth Gray had not slept more than 4 hours total since the ambush. She stood now on the bridge, a cup of coffee cooling in her hand as she studied the star map. "Status report," she said to the bridge crew. Lieutenant Commander Peter Jones looked up from the tactical station. "All weapons are ready, Captain. The shields are holding at 90% after Dr. Wright's latest adjustments. Communications are still picking up heavy Imperial traffic," Maria Sanchez added from her station. "They're looking for us, but they don't seem to know where we are." Elizabeth nodded. "And our position?" Lieutenant Daniel Brown checked his navigation console. "We're approaching the Targus system, Captain. ETA 20 minutes at current speed." "Very good." Elizabeth finished her coffee and set the cup down. "Let's hope we find what we came for." The door to the bridge slid open and Dr. Alan Wright entered. Dark circles hung under his eyes, evidence that he had been working just as hard as the captain. "Dr. Wright," Elizabeth acknowledged. "How are the stealth systems holding up?" "They're stable for now," Alan replied. "But I'm concerned about the power drain. We weren't meant to stay cloaked this long." Elizabeth frowned. "How much longer can we maintain?" 12 hours, maybe less if we have to push the engines." Before she could respond, Maria turned suddenly in her chair. "Captain, I'm picking up a massive signal burst from ahead, some kind of automated beacon." "On screen," Elizabeth ordered. The main display showed a small Imperial outpost station orbiting the 4th moon of a gas giant. It wasn't large, but its antennas were impressive. "It's a listening post," Peter said, "part of their early warning network." "Can they detect us?" Elizabeth asked. Alan moved to the science station and checked the readings. "We're right at the edge of their sensor range. If we maintain course, we'll pass too close." "Alter course," Elizabeth ordered. "Give it a wide berth." Daniel's fingers moved over his controls. "New course plotted. This will add 30 minutes to our arrival time." "Better slow than detected," Elizabeth said. The ship began its turn, but suddenly the bridge lights flickered. A low hum that had been present since they activated the stealth system faltered. "What was that?" Elizabeth demanded. Alan rushed to a console. "Power fluctuation in the stealth field. It's failing." "Reroute emergency power," Elizabeth ordered. "I'm trying," Alan said, his fingers flying over the controls. "Something's wrong with the main converter." The lights flickered again, and this time they stayed dim. The hum of the stealth system went silent. "Stealth system is down," Peter reported, his voice tight. "We are visible to sensors." On the display they could see the Imperial outpost. Its antennas swiveled toward them like the head of a curious animal. "They've spotted us," Maria said. Imperial alert signals broadcasting on all frequencies. Elizabeth didn't hesitate. Red alert. Shields up. Lieutenant Brown, get us to Targus, at maximum speed. No point in subtlety now. The Defiant leaped forward as its engines powered to full strength. But they all knew it was too late to hide. Multiple ships changing course to intercept, Peter reported. 7 Imperial cruisers and something bigger. A Dreadnought-class vessel. Elizabeth's jaw tightened. Time to intercept? The closest ship will reach us in 15 minutes, Peter said. The others shortly after. The Dreadnought is further back, at least 30 minutes away. Put me on shipwide, Elizabeth said. When Maria nodded that the channel was open, she continued. All hands, this is the captain. Our stealth systems have failed, and Imperial forces are moving to intercept. We will continue to our objective. Battle stations, gray out. She turned to her officers. Options? We can't outrun them all, Daniel said. Not if we're heading to Targus. And we can't fight 7 cruisers plus a dreadnought, Peter added. Elizabeth nodded. Then we do neither. We continue to Targus, complete our mission, and find a different way out. She turned to Maria. Any communications from the Imperial ships? Yes, Captain, Maria said, surprise in her voice. They're hailing us. It's a personal message from Warlord Krazak. The bridge went quiet. Every human in the fleet knew that name. Krazak had led the attack on the human colonies 50 years ago. He was responsible for millions of deaths. Put him on screen, Elizabeth said. The main display changed to show the face of an Imperial officer. The Krelax were humanoid, but with gray-green skin and ridge-like plates on their skulls instead of hair. Krazak's face was more scarred than most, with one eye replaced by a cybernetic implant that glowed red. Human vessel, Krazak said, his voice deep and harsh. You have violated Imperial space. Surrender now, or be destroyed. Elizabeth stepped forward. This is Captain Elizabeth Gray of the USS Defiant. We are on a peaceful mission to investigate Imperial violations of the treaty. Your scout ships crossed into our territory first. Krazak's organic eye narrowed. Lies. The Empire honors its agreements, unlike humans. Your ship will make a fine trophy, Captain Gray. I will add it to my collection, along with the others. Others? Elizabeth asked, but Krazak cut the transmission. He's firing, Peter shouted. The Defiant rocked as Imperial weapons struck its shields. The new technology held, but the bridge shook with the impact. Shields at 80%, Peter reported. Their weapons are powerful, but we're holding. Return fire, Elizabeth ordered. Target their weapon systems only. The Defiant's advanced targeting systems locked onto the Imperial cruiser. Beams of energy shot out, striking with precision that surprised even the human crew. The Imperial ship's main weapon mounts exploded in a series of small flashes. Direct hits, Peter said. Their forward batteries are disabled. 2 more cruisers approaching from Sector 7, Daniel warned. Elizabeth studied the tactical display. Route us through the asteroid field. We can use it for cover. The Defiant sped toward a dense field of rocks. It was dangerous, but the human ship was more agile than the larger Imperial cruisers. Captain, Maria called out, I'm intercepting communications from the Imperial ships. I think they're surprised by our shields. They're calling us the ghost ship because their first shots didn't destroy us. Elizabeth allowed herself a small smile. Good. Let them be afraid for once. As they entered the asteroid field, the ship wove between massive rocks with skill. Behind them, one Imperial cruiser attempted to follow but misjudged a turn. It scraped against an asteroid, sending it spinning. We've lost 2 of them in the field, Daniel reported. But the others are going around. They'll catch up soon. And the dreadnought? Elizabeth asked. Still coming, Peter said grimly. 20 minutes out. Chief Engineer Frank Williams called from engineering. Captain, the main power coupling was sabotaged. That's why the stealth system failed. Elizabeth's eyes hardened. Sabotaged? Are you certain? Yes, ma'am. Someone cut through the safety protocols. It wasn't an accident. Security Chief Martinez, Elizabeth called over the comm. "I want this ship searched top to bottom. Find out who did this." As the Defiant emerged from the asteroid field, the gas giant of the Targus system filled the view screen. Beyond it, they could see their target, the fourth planet, where intelligence suggested the Imperial military was building up forces. "We're going to make a run for it," Elizabeth announced. "Full speed to Targus 4. Let's see what the Empire is hiding." Before that dreadnought arrives, the ship surged forward, but 3 Imperial cruisers appeared from behind the planet's moon. "They were waiting for us," Peter said. The trap was sprung. The USS Defiant was surrounded, deep in enemy space, with a traitor on board and time running out. The USS Defiant shook as another blast from the Imperial cruisers struck its shields. Captain Elizabeth Gray gripped her command chair while Lieutenant Commander Peter Jones called out status reports. "Shields holding at 65%, Peter said. "But we can't take much more of this." Elizabeth studied the tactical display. 3 Imperial cruisers blocked their path to Targus 4, while 2 more approached from behind. The massive dreadnought was still coming, its weapons capable of breaking through even the Defiant's advanced shields. "We need options," Elizabeth said to Dr. Alan Wright, looked up from the science station. "Captain, there's a dense nebula near the 5th moon. The gas clouds would hide us from their sensors, and from our own," Peter warned. "We'd be flying blind." Elizabeth nodded. "Lieutenant Brown, set course for that nebula, full speed." The helmsman entered the commands, and the Defiant turned sharply, accelerating away from the Imperial ships. On the screen they could see the colorful gases of the nebula growing larger. "They're pursuing," Peter reported. "All 5 cruisers." "Let them come," Elizabeth said. "We need to buy time." The ship plunged into the nebula. Outside, the view changed from the blackness of space to swirling purple and blue gases. The sensors began to lose clarity, and the screens filled with static. "Cut main engines," Elizabeth ordered. "Minimal power only, let's disappear." The Defiant slowed and then stopped, hovering in the gas cloud. The Imperial cruisers followed them in, but soon slowed too, their sensors equally blind in the nebula. "They're spreading out to search for us," Peter said, watching the fuzzy sensor readings. Elizabeth turned to Maria Sanchez at communications. "Any word from Security Chief Martinez on our saboteur?" Maria shook her head. "Nothing yet, Captain, but ship's internal communications are affected by the nebula too." Elizabeth stood. "Dr. Wright, you have the bridge. I'm going to check on the search personally." She left the bridge and made her way through the dimly lit corridors. The ship was on emergency power to avoid detection, casting everything in a red glow. Crew members moved with purpose, their faces tense but determined. Elizabeth found Olivia, Martinez Outside Engineering, coordinating search teams. "Any progress, Chief?" she asked. Olivia looked up from her tablet. "We've cleared decks 1 through 5. No sign of the saboteur yet." She lowered her voice. "Captain, this had to be someone with engineering knowledge and access to restricted areas." Elizabeth nodded. "Keep looking. We need to find them before—" A loud bang echoed through the ship, followed by the scream of tearing metal. "What was that?" Elizabeth demanded, reaching for her communicator. "Bridge, report." Dr. Wright's voice came through with static. "Captain, we've hit something in the nebula. Some kind of structure. Hull breach on deck 7. "Seal it off," Elizabeth ordered, already running toward the nearest lift. "I'm on my way back." When she reached the bridge, chaos greeted her. Warning lights flashed on multiple stations. The main screen showed mostly gas clouds, but through them, they could make out a dark shape. "What did we hit?" she asked. Alan looked up from the science console. "Not an asteroid or natural object, it's artificial. Some kind of space station, and it's massive." "A Krelax outpost?" Elizabeth asked. Alan shook his head. "I don't think so. The design doesn't match Imperial architecture. And look at these energy readings. They're unlike anything I've seen before." Elizabeth turned to Daniel Brown at navigation. "Can we move away?" "Negative, Captain," he replied. "The collision damaged our port thrusters. Engineers are working on it." Elizabeth considered their options. "How close are the Imperial ships?" "Still searching," Peter said. "But they'll have detected the collision. It's only a matter of time." "Elizabeth, Made a decision. If we can't move away, let's find out what we hit. Prepare an away team. Dr. Wright, you're with me. Lieutenant Commander Jones, you have the bridge. 10 minutes later, Elizabeth, Allen, and 3 security officers stood in the airlock wearing spacesuits. Through the small window, they could see part of the structure they had collided with. It's huge, Allen said, checking his scanner. The impact only damaged our ship because we were moving. The station barely has a scratch. Any life signs? Elizabeth asked. None that I can detect, but there's power running through it. The airlock opened and they pushed off, floating through space toward the strange station. Up close it was even more impressive. A massive ring-shaped structure with spires extending inward. The metal was dark but had a blue glow coming from lines that ran through it like veins. They found an opening that led inside. Their suit lights revealed corridors much larger than human or even Krelax would need. Everything was covered in a thin layer of dust. This place is ancient, Allen said, his voice filled with wonder. Look at these markings. Not Imperial writing, not human either. They moved deeper into the station, following the blue glowing lines. Eventually, they reached a large circular room with a platform in the center. The platform held what looked like a control panel. This must be the command center, Elizabeth said. Allen approached the panel cautiously. These symbols, I can't read them, but they follow a logical pattern. Maybe I can. As his gloved hand touched the panel, the blue lines throughout the room grew brighter. A humming sound filled the air, and then the entire chamber lit up. Above the platform, a holographic display appeared, showing stars, planets, and what looked like flight paths. It's a map, Elizabeth realized. A map of this whole sector. Allen studied it with growing excitement. Captain, look at these paths, near Targus 4. They're ship movements, Imperial ship movements. This station has been tracking them. Elizabeth moved closer. Can you tell how long it's been recording? Allen touched another control and the display changed. This data goes back in centuries, long before humans encountered the Krelax Empire. While they explored the control room, one of the security officers called from a side chamber. Captain, you need to see this. They joined him and found a room, filled with strange capsules. Inside one broken capsule, they could see a humanoid figure, but much taller than a human, with 4 arms and an elongated head. What is this place? Elizabeth whispered. A monitoring station, Allen said, the pieces falling into place. Built by some ancient species to watch this region of space. A noise behind them made them turn. Security Chief Olivia Martinez stood in the doorway, her spacesuit showing she had followed them from the ship. Chief Martinez, Elizabeth said. I didn't authorize you to leave the ship. Olivia raised a hand device that wasn't standard equipment. No, you didn't, Captain. Realization dawned on Elizabeth's face. It was you. You sabotaged the stealth system. Olivia nodded. The Empire pays well for human secrets, but this, she looked around the alien station. This is worth far more than they offered me. You're a traitor, Elizabeth said, her voice hard. Do you know how many lives you've put at risk? I know exactly what I've done, Olivia replied. And when Warlord Krezak arrives, I'll be well rewarded. She aimed her device at them, but before she could use it, the station shuddered. An alarm began to sound, not human or Imperial, but alien. What's happening? Olivia demanded. Allen checked his scanner. Imperial ships are firing on the station. They've found us. The station shook again. Elizabeth seized the moment of distraction to lunge at Olivia, knocking the device from her hand. The 2 women grappled in the low gravity, bouncing against walls and equipment. One of the security officers helped restrain Olivia, while Elizabeth caught her breath. We need to get back to the ship, she said. This station could have vital information. There's more, Allen said, still working on the alien console. Captain, according to this data, the Krelax have found other stations like this one. They've been harvesting the technology. That's how they developed their new weapons. Elizabeth's eyes widened. That's what this military buildup is about. They're preparing to use alien technology against us. Another explosion rocked the station closer this time. "We need to go now," Elizabeth ordered, "and we're taking this traitor with us." They made their way back through the corridors as pieces of ceiling began to fall. When they reached the airlock where they had entered, they could see the Defiant through the opening, its engines now repaired and glowing as it hovered nearby. "The Imperial ships are closing in," Alan warned. Elizabeth looked back at the Ancient, stationed then at the Defiant. Their mission had just become much more complicated and much more important. The USS Defiant sped away from the Ancient station, its engines pushing to full power. Captain Elizabeth Gray and her away team had barely made it back on board before Imperial cruisers began closing in. On the bridge, the tactical display showed 5 enemy ships in pursuit with the Dreadnought not far behind. "How long until we reach safe distance?" Elizabeth asked, still removing her spacesuit helmet. Lieutenant Daniel Brown checked his navigation console. 3 minutes at current speed, Captain." "And the Imperial ships?" Lieutenant Commander Peter Jones frowned at his tactical screen. 4 minutes until they're in weapons range, but the Dreadnought will be able to fire in 5. Elizabeth nodded. "Then we have a small window. Status of the alien data we downloaded?" Dr. Alan Wright was already at the science station connecting a device he'd brought from the station. "Transfer in progress. The symbols are unlike anything I've seen, but the computer is beginning to find patterns." Elizabeth turned to where 2 security officers held the traitor, Olivia Martinez. Her face showed no remorse, only anger at being caught. "Take her to the brig," Elizabeth ordered. "Full security protocols." As they led Olivia away, she called back, "You're all dead anyway. The Empire can't be stopped." Elizabeth ignored her and focused on the main screen. "We need to lose these ships." Lieutenant Brown set course for Targus 4, full speed. The crew looked surprised. "Captain?" Peter questioned. "That's deeper into Imperial territory." "Exactly," Elizabeth said. "They won't expect it. And we still have a mission to complete." The Defiant changed course, pushing toward the 4th planet of the Targus system. Behind them, the Imperial ships adjusted to follow. "They're gaining," Peter warned. Elizabeth considered their options. "Prepare for combat. Target their engines only. I want to slow them down, not destroy them." The Defiant fired its weapons. Precise beams struck the lead Imperial cruiser, causing it to fall back as its engines sputtered. "Direct hit," Peter reported. "One ship falling behind." "The others are spreading out," Daniel added. "They're trying to flank us." Elizabeth studied the tactical display. They couldn't fight all the ships at once, and the Dreadnought would be in range soon. "New plan," she announced. "Take us into the atmosphere of Targus 4. Daniel looked up in surprise. "The atmosphere, Captain. The Defiant isn't designed for planetary entry." "Neither are Imperial dreadnoughts," Elizabeth replied. "Do it." The ship changed course again, diving toward the cloudy planet below. As they entered the upper atmosphere, the ship began to shake. "Hull temperature rising," Peter reported. "Shields holding but weakening under the stress." On the screen, they could see the Imperial cruisers following them down, their hulls glowing red from atmospheric friction. But the massive dreadnought remained in orbit, unable to follow. "At least we don't have to worry about the big one," Elizabeth said. "Take us lower into the cloud cover." The Defiant plunged into thick clouds, visibility dropping to 0. The shaking intensified. "Shields at 40%, Peter called out. 2 Imperial ships still following. The others have pulled back. Elizabeth nodded. "Level us out just below the cloud layer. Let's see what's down here." As they emerged from the clouds, the crew gasped. Below them stretched a massive complex of buildings and landing pads. Imperial ships of all sizes sat on the ground, with more under construction and huge hangars. "It's a shipyard," Maria Sanchez said from communications. "The biggest I've ever seen." "This confirms our intelligence," Elizabeth said grimly. "They are building for war." Alan looked up from the science station. "Captain, I've decrypted part of the alien data. It's worse than we thought. These shipyards, they're all over the Empire. This is just one of many." The ship rocked as weapons. Fire from the surface began targeting them. "Ground batteries locking on," Peter warned. "And those 2 cruisers are still behind us." Get us back above the clouds, Elizabeth ordered. We have the proof we need. The Defiant pulled up, re-entering the thick cloud layer. The weapons fire from below became less accurate, but the ship was still taking hits. Shields at 30%, Peter reported. We can't take much more of this. Elizabeth made a quick decision. Set course for the northern pole. The magnetic interference should help hide us. As they flew toward the pole, the ship continued to shake. System warnings flashed. On multiple consoles, Captain, Alan called, excitement in his voice despite their situation. I've found something in the alien data. A message, or more accurately, an activation sequence. For what? Elizabeth asked. The alien station, Alan replied. It's not just for monitoring. It has defenses. If I can send this sequence, it might give us the edge we need. Do it, Elizabeth ordered without hesitation. Alan's fingers flew over his console, transmitting the sequence back to the station they'd found. For several tense moments, nothing happened. Then Maria called from communications. Captain Massive. Energy spike detected from the alien station. On the tactical display, they watched as the ancient station suddenly lit up with power. A pulse of energy shot out, washing over the Imperial dreadnought and the cruisers still in orbit. What's happening? Elizabeth demanded. Their systems are shutting down, Peter said in amazement. The pulse disabled their ships. Not just the ships in orbit, Alan added, reading from his console. The effect is spreading to the surface. The shipyard's power is failing too. Elizabeth allowed herself a small smile. This alien race didn't just build monitoring stations. They built peacekeeping systems. Captain, Maria interrupted. I'm picking up a new signal. It's coming from the station, but it's on all frequencies, Imperial and human. Put it on speakers, Elizabeth ordered. A voice filled the bridge, neither human nor Krelax, but somehow understandable to all. This is Guardian Protector System of the predecessors. After eons of dormancy, I have been awakened to fulfill my primary directive, to prevent technological misuse and aggressive expansion. All weapon systems within my range have been temporarily disabled. The bridge crew looked at each other in amazement. Can we communicate with it? Elizabeth asked. Maria nodded, opening a channel. Guardian, this is Captain Elizabeth Gray of the USS Defiant. We discovered your station and activated your systems. There was a pause before the voice responded. Captain Gray, your actions have prevented a great conflict. The species you call Krelax has violated the pact of non-aggression established by my creators. They have weaponized predecessor technology and prepared for war. We suspected as much, Elizabeth replied. Can you help us stop them? I am already doing so, Guardian answered. Similar stations throughout this sector are activating. All Imperial military technology derived from predecessor artifacts is being neutralized. Alan looked up from his console in amazement. Captain, reports are coming in from all over Imperial space. Their ships are powering down, their weapons are failing. Elizabeth turned to the tactical display. The Imperial cruisers that had been chasing them were now drifting, their lights dark. On the surface below, the massive shipyard had gone silent. Guardian? Elizabeth asked. What happens now? The time has come for truth, the voice replied. I am transmitting proof of the military leadership's deception to all Imperial worlds. The Emperor himself has been misled by his warlords. Maria's eyes widened as she monitored communications. Captain, Imperial civilian channels are exploding with activity. They're calling for Warlord Krizak's arrest. Elizabeth sat, back in her command chair, hardly believing what was happening. One human ship crosses the border and the whole Empire trembles. Not the Empire, Alan corrected gently. Just those who would lead it to war. A new alert sounded from the communications station. Captain, Maria said, surprise in her voice. We're receiving a direct transmission from the Imperial Palace on the Krelax homeworld. It's the Emperor himself. The bridge went silent. No human had ever spoken directly with the Krelax Emperor. Elizabeth straightened her uniform. Put him on screen. The future of both their peoples hung in the balance. The main screen on the USS Defiant's bridge flickered, then displayed the image of the Krelax Emperor. Unlike the military leaders with their battle scars and cybernetic enhancements, the Emperor had smooth gray-green skin and clear eyes. He wore robes of deep purple instead of armor, and his head ridges were adorned with silver symbols of office. Captain Elizabeth Gray stood before the screen, aware that she was the first human to ever speak directly with the ruler of the vast empire. "I am Emperor Zorax," the figure said, his voice surprisingly soft. "Are you the commander of the vessel that awakened the Guardian?" Elizabeth nodded. "I am Captain Elizabeth Gray of the USS Defiant. We discovered the ancient station while investigating Imperial military buildup along our border." The Emperor studied her for a moment. "A single ship deep in our territory. You have shown great courage, Captain Gray." "Or desperation," Elizabeth replied honestly. "We had evidence your forces were preparing for war." "Not by my command," the Emperor said, anger flashing in his eyes. "Thanks to the Guardian's transmissions, I now know that Warlord Krezak and his allies have been building this war machine in secret. They told me these shipyards were for exploration and defense." On a side screen, Dr. Alan Wright continued to analyze data from the alien station. He whispered to Elizabeth, "The Guardian system is confirming his story. The Emperor's communications show he was misled." Elizabeth turned back to the Emperor. "Your military leaders lied to you while planning to attack our colonies. Why should we trust any Imperial word now?" The Emperor's expression hardened. "Because I have already ordered the arrest of Krezak and his conspirators. Their deception is an insult to the Imperial throne and a violation of our laws." As if to confirm his words, Maria Sanchez called from communications. "Captain, Imperial channels are reporting the arrest of multiple high-ranking military officers. Civilian ships are moving to block military vessels that refuse to stand down." "Invading," Emperor continued. "For 50 years we have maintained an uneasy peace. Perhaps now we can build something better." Elizabeth considered his words carefully. This moment could change the future for both their peoples. "What do you propose?" she asked. "I request your presence at the Imperial Palace, Captain Gray. Not as a prisoner, but as an honored guest. Bring your science officer as well, the one who understood the Guardian technology. Together with the Guardian's help, we can create a lasting agreement." The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. "Enter the heart of the Empire." "If I may, Captain," Alan said quietly. "The Guardian's transmissions have changed everything. Imperial citizens are demanding peace. This might be our only chance." Elizabeth nodded, then addressed the Emperor. "We accept your invitation, but our ship remains on alert. Any sign of treachery?" "None will come from me," the Emperor promised. "I am transmitting coordinates for a neutral meeting place where you will be escorted safely to the palace." After the transmission ended, Elizabeth turned to her officers. "Lieutenant Commander Jones, you have command while Dr. Wright and I are away. If anything happens to us, take the Defiant home with the evidence we've gathered." Peter nodded solemnly. "Understood, Captain. Be careful." 6 hours later, Elizabeth and Alan found themselves in the grand meeting hall of the Imperial Palace. Massive windows showed the sprawling capital city below. Security was present but respectful, keeping their distance. The Emperor entered with a small group of advisors, notably all civilians. He gestured to a large circular table. "Please be seated," he said. "History will remember this day." As they sat down, a holographic form appeared in the center of the table, the Guardian, now using a humanoid shape made of blue light. "I have analyzed all communications and historical records," the Guardian began. "For centuries, the predecessors maintained peace in this sector by preventing any single power from dominating others. Their disappearance allowed the rise of empires and conflicts." "Why did they disappear?" Alan asked. "They evolved beyond physical form," the Guardian replied, "but they left us to watch and intervene when necessary. Warlord Krezak's discovery and misuse of their technology forced that intervention." The Emperor leaned forward. "Guardian, what happens now? Your systems have disabled much of our military capability. Only weapons derived from predecessor technology the Guardian clarified. And only temporarily. My purpose is not to weaken the Empire, but to prevent war. The choice of peace must be yours. Elizabeth looked at the Emperor. Our governments have tried negotiations before, they always failed. Because military leaders controlled the discussions, the Emperor said. They profited from tension and conflict. Without their influence, we can find common ground. Over the next several hours, they drafted the framework for a new treaty. The Guardian provided historical context and suggested terms that had worked between other species in the past. The Emperor proved to be thoughtful and fair-minded, genuinely interested in peace. There is one more thing, the Guardian said as they finished. The predecessors established monitoring stations throughout this sector. I propose they be jointly administered by humans and the Krelax, creating a buffer zone between your territories. Shared responsibility, Elizabeth said, considering the idea, and a chance to learn from each other, the Emperor added. When they finally reached agreement, the Emperor stood. Captain Gray, when you crossed our border in your single warship, you changed the Empire forever. Some would call it an act of war. I see it as the first step toward true peace. Elizabeth smiled. Sometimes the bravest act is not to fight, but to seek understanding. 2 weeks later, the USS Defiant approached Earth, escorted by an Imperial diplomatic vessel, the first to ever enter human space peacefully. On the bridge, Elizabeth watched the blue planet grow larger on the screen. Quite a sight, Alan said, standing beside her. Hard to believe everything that's happened. They're calling you a hero back home, Maria said, looking up from communications. Both of you. Elizabeth shook her head. We just did our duty, and had some help from an ancient alien AI. The treaty negotiations start tomorrow, Peter reminded them. Are you ready? Elizabeth thought about the Emperor, who had proven to be a wise leader, and about the Guardian, who offered guidance but insisted both sides make their own choices. I think we all are, she replied. For the first time in 50 years, humans and the Krelax are truly talking to each other. On the screen, Earth Naval Command sent welcome messages as the two ships approached the orbital stations. Civilian ships launched to watch the historic arrival, their lights twinkling against the darkness of space. Frank Williams called from engineering. Captain, you should know. They're calling this the Defiant Peace in the news reports. Elizabeth smiled at that. One human warship had crossed the border, and the Empire had indeed trembled, not from fear, but from the shock of truth that led to understanding. As the final approach began, Elizabeth Gray gave the order to lower shields completely, a symbolic gesture of trust. The Imperial ship did the same. Together, former enemies flew side by side toward a new future, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come not from strength of arms, but from the courage to seek peace.